For too long, we've been so frightened of causing offence that we haven't looked hard enough at what is going on in our communities. This is passive tolerance, and I'll tell you where it leads. It leads to children, British children, going to Pakistan in the summer holidays before they've even started their GCSEs and being forced to marry a man they've never met. It leads to children, British children, having their genitals mutilated, not just a clinic in Lagos, but in the back streets of Britain. This passive tolerance, it's turned us into a less integrated country. It's put our children in danger. It is unforgivable. So let me say right here, no more passive tolerance in Britain. We've passed the laws, and now I want them enforced. People who organised forced marriages, I want them prosecuted. Parents who take their children for FGM, I want them arrested. And as we do that, we shouldn't just be saying what's wrong with these practices. We should be saying what's right with Britain. Freedom, democracy, equality. These are precious. People fought for them. Many died for them. In the trenches a century ago, on the beaches 30 years later, in the suffragettes, in gay pride. Do you know what? Half the world is crying out for these freedoms. They see what we've achieved with them. Free speech and the best literature in the world. Freedom of religion and many religions, faiths living side by side peacefully. Free thinking and the endless advances in medicine and technology that has brought. A free economy and our standard of living our grandparents could only have dreamt of. I want my children, I want all our children to know they're part of something big, the proudest multiracial democracy on earth. That's why we're making sure they learn that British history at school. That's why. That's why we got the British history lessons at school. That's why we've started National Citizen Service to bring different people together. I want them to grow up proud of our country. That is right. Less Britain bashing, more national pride. Our way, the Conservative way, and the only way to greater days. So, my friends, big battles, big arguments, a greater Britain. Keeping our head as Labour lose theirs. So I have a message for those who voted for us and those who never have. If you believe in strong defence and helping the poorest, most desperate people in the world, if you want an NHS that's there for everybody and schools that stretch our children, and you understand that none of that is possible without a strong economy, if you believe we can become the enterprise capital of the world and beat poverty, if you believe that the fight against extremism is the fight for existence, and you want us to be the generation that ends discrimination, if you want these things, the party you need is the party right here. And it's never too late. Never too late. Bernard Harris from Leicester, he wrote to me before polling day, and he said this: aged 82, this is possibly my last election. In my life, I foolishly voted Labour, believing it served the working class. How wrong I was. Labour is against all I aspire to. I am 100% for a united kingdom, a sound economy, free enterprise, a trading Europe, and a decent standard of living. Only a Conservative government would achieve this. Well, Bernard, you found the right party, and I want many more to follow in your footsteps. So I believe that we can make this era, these 2010s, a defining decade for our country. The turnaround decade. The one which people will look back on and say, that's the time when the tide turned. When people no longer felt the current going against them, but working with them. We can be that greater Britain. Because we know this. Nothing is written. We proved it in schools across our country, that the poorest children don't have to get the worst results, they can get the best. So over the next 5 years, we'll show that deep problems in our society, they're not inevitable, that a childhood in care doesn't have to mean a life of struggle, that a stint in prison doesn't mean you'll go out and do the same thing all over again, that being black or Asian or female or gay doesn't mean you'll be treated differently. Nothing is written. And if we're to be the global success story of the 21st century, we need to write millions of these individual success stories. A greater Britain, made of greater expectations, where renters become homeowners, employees become employers, a small island becomes an even bigger economy, and where extremism is defeated once and for all. A greater Britain, no more its people dragged down or held back, no more some children with their noses pressed to the window as they watch the world moving ahead without them. No, a country raising its sights, its people reaching new heights. A great British takeoff that leaves no one behind. That's our dream, to help you realize your dreams. A greater Britain, made of greater hope, greater chances, greater security. So let us get out there, all of us, and let's make it happen.
And so the audience rise to applaud Mr. Cameron's vision of a greater Britain. We'll get a few thoughts from John Pena, and perhaps we'll hear a few thoughts from the floor of the conference hall in a moment. I guess 2 or 3 highlights. Well, the housing proposals we knew about. Well, actually, curiously, one of the most passionate parts of the speech was all about creating opportunity, ending discrimination. That was quite interesting, and also about ending segregation. Saying any institution which practiced intolerance would be shut down. No more passive tolerance. That was interesting. Promise of a greater Britain we had there. Quite a vicious attack on Jeremy Corbyn as well. Let's see what John Pena made of it. Are you there, John?
Yeah, Peter, yeah, I mean, you can hear the reaction in the hall. They're on their feet, they leapt to their feet. They gave it as warm a reception as David Cameron could ever have wished for. It was in many ways really quite striking, and there was a new tone to this speech. As far as economic policy was concerned, it was fiscally conservative in a way that we've become used to. But the new tone was a striking strain of social liberalism, expressed in a franker way than I think we've heard from this Prime Minister at any time in the past, setting some really quite bold goals for how progress is to be measured on dealing with poverty, dealing with inequality, tackling discrimination, prison reform. The list went on. Let's just get some reaction in the hall. Boris Johnson, if I might for a moment, Mayor of London. Boris, you got a pretty warm tribute from the Prime Minister there. You would have liked the tone of that speech.
That was a fabulous speech. The speech totally hit the nail on the head for me, because he was talking about all the things that we need to do to address the problems in society, as well as a great message of hope and encouragement. So I think it had the balance, recognising that there are too many people who are being left behind, and we have, I think, the answers to help them.
And in many ways, a shift in the balance, Boris. It was more socially liberal than we've heard from David Cameron, I think, in the past. The sort of politics you support.
The most powerful passage for me was the passage that talked about opportunity for people who don't necessarily have opportunity, who don't feel that the thing is necessarily yet for them. Showing how you can open doors for people who feel discriminated against because of their race, their religion, their gender, whatever it happens, their sexual orientation, whatever it happens to be. And I thought that was the moment.
He clearly feels he's got a lot of work still to do, Boris.
I thought it was
a lot of work still to do. You're going to have to wait a little while for your dream of leading the party, it seems.
My dream is to discharge my remaining mandate as Mayor of London, as you know.
That's what we'd expect Boris to say, Peter, in response to that. I mean, the goals in the speech, we'll see if we can get some more reaction here in the hall, but the goals were pretty bold, as I say, but they were also measurable. Poverty, one can see how progress is made on dealing with that. Other goals too.